How we looking, people? What is going on with this internet today? Y'all, I'm about to fire Comcast. All right, hopefully y'all can see me right now. I'm for real about to fire Comcast. It looks like y'all can see me. I can see me. You got the buffering blues too? Me too. I look lovely. I'm gonna tell y'all a secret. I'm gonna tell y'all a secret about Abby Martin, y'all. Can I tell y'all a secret about Abby? And Max my boy. I like Mike. I love Mike, man. He's a dope dude. Her fiance is dope. So he knows I'm not meaning this offensively when I say this. But when I tell y'all that Abby Martin is actually more beautiful in real life than she is on pictures, yeah, she is. She is. However, and if you've ever had a conversation with her, you'd be blown away. This is the reserved version of Abby. Y'all haven't met her in person, where she actually is more intense. I mean, she's way more smiley. She doesn't smile as much because of the stuff she covers, But in reality, she's way more intelligent than you probably think she. I mean, I know all y'all love her, but however intelligent you think she is, multiply that by like 50. Okay. However beautiful you think she is, multiply that by about 10, and then you'll probably get the real Abby Martin. That's in all seriousness. So, yeah, just had to tell y'all that. So, it looks like we finally were able to get this to work. Like I said, I don't know what's going on. Comcast is getting on my nerves. But, so Venezuela was undergoing a military coup started by Juan Guaido, who shall hereforth be known as Juan Guaidotti, as in Wild E. Coyote. Shout out to Who Burns, who sent me that super chat with that nickname. They basically said that Juan Guaido was the Wild E. Coyote of coup attempts, because this is like his third or fourth attempt in like 3 or 4 months. It was an utter failure. And in my humble opinion, if any of you were watching that day, it became an utter failure the moment that he decided to announce the coup on YouTube, shooting with his phone in full screen portrait mode. Yeah, full screen portrait mode. Don't get me started on that. But that's what he thought was a good idea. He thought it was a good idea to announce to the whole world on YouTube that he was going to start a military coup with no generals on his side. Only about apparently 12 people and no civilians. And his bright idea, for those of you who don't know, Juan Guaido would be like the 35 or 36-year-old version of Donald Trump in Venezuela. He came out of nowhere. No one knew who he was. Nobody in the legislature even knew who he was until about like 3 or 4 months before he was announced the interim president. And furthermore, he's like super right wing, and he is representative. The reason they call them the opposition is because they are the minority party, because they represent the minority interest. They have been the minority party for quite some time because they represent the right wing, the corporate wing. And so, if you know anything, we're from the States, so we know what kind of people represent the corporate wing. No matter what party you're in, right? They tend to look a little pale skin, European. They tend to have a lot of money in their bank accounts. And they don't generally like to get their hands or nails or hair dirty. So Juan Guaido thought it would be wise to call for a military coup. He said, all of my supporters, come out into the street. And y'all come and fight for me. Think about it like this. You know what he basically just asked? Hey, Kim Kardashian, what's that girl's name? Megan Fox, Paris Hilton, George Clooney, Like all those people, y'all come into the streets and let's go attack the palace together, because that's what rich people have always been known to do. Do y'all ever wonder how Fidel Castro kind of took over the government so easily in Cuba? Because the government and most of the people who were profiting from its unethical partnership with the U.S. military-industrial complex, those were all rich white people. Rich white people don't tend to fight for revolutions, nor do they like to get their hands dirty defending revolutions, which is why a lot of those Venezuelans moved to Miami instead. And so I don't know what the hell she thought was going to happen. All right. He thought that he was going to win. Didn't really work out how he expected it to. And Abby will now kind of clue us in on not only how and why it failed, but what was really so utterly disgusting about this military coup attempt to begin with. So let's.
Several parliamentary coups, and we should be very, very worried about how dramatic these escalations are getting. When I was there in 2017 on the ground, there were violent armed insurrections being fomented by the protesters. But it is very, very scary to see now soliciting, even though it was just a dozen military personnel, soliciting them to try to stage this violent insurrection, bolstering Juan Guaido, the Trump puppet, and actually shooting at police and GNB soldiers. Now, I think one really disturbing aspect of this is kind of Juan Guaido's media arm. He has the propaganda arm of the entire Western corporate media. I woke up to Twitter moments, basically just parroting what he was saying, all over corporate media, essentially acting as his propaganda talking points. And I find that very, very bizarre, that, he just has to declare something, and you have everyone from the Washington Post to Twitter itself repeating and parroting his propaganda line.
Asked Abby what she thought about
talking about how violent it got, how they took a couple of people from the military and they ultimately infiltrate the presidential palace. Once again, Maduro, I don't know a lot about you. I'm not gonna, call you all kinds of names. I don't think your palace or your thing. Don't call it the presidential palace. Maybe call it the presidential commons or something a little more endearing. But in all seriousness, what Abby said was impactful because, she was talking about, it seems like Guaido is doing all of the things that Maduro is being, as if he's doing all these things and he's the one calling violence. Like she was on the ground. She said herself, she was on the ground in 2017. And even then it was the protesters of Maduro who were being violent even at that point. And yet, with all the violence being fomented by Juan Guaido and his, seriously, right? Never met Maduro personally. I don't know really much about him outside the fact that he was a bus driver and that Chavez chose him. But it does beg the question, how bad of a person, how your country from inside of it. And it's true on your side. You have all the police force on your side. You have all the generals came out and said that they support Maduro. And Guaido is, y'all get that? Like, think about how weird that sounds. Guaido has committed out and out treason by any literal or figurative definition of the word, and he's still alive. Laser about a military coup, and he's not in jail. Yo, do you know something? Let's take over the government, everybody. If I went live and did that, y'all would never see me again. Like, it would, listen, when I tell you, it isn't just that I would be arrested. I literally mean that. You would never see me again. They would have me in Guantanamo Bay right now. I'm going to be covering a story. I have to get on the phone with the young man, but I'm going to be covering a story where the Trump administration tried to silence somebody who was protesting him. The Trump administration, they literally arrested 21 Savage, the rapper, for speaking out against the camps in along the border. and for calling out the federal government for the fact that Flint still doesn't have clean water. He was targeted. That is the official statement of not myself, but the soldiers. So our government targets people to remove their free speech regularly. Look at what we're doing to Assange, and yet the entire Western media, like Abby said, is targeting Maduro, and the government is using Guaido to try and overthrow Maduro, who was elected by his people. And he's not dead. Guaido is not dead. And he's not in jail. And apparently his barber isn't in jail either, because Guaido always has a fresh haircut. So it makes you look.
This is really, really disturbing. Again, the U.S. is always cabinet is the U.S. empire's backyard, and they have the right, the preordained right to, and he picked the most vile war criminals to lead this regime change attempt. And we all know that he's not going to back down. And in fact, he doubles down on some of his worst failures. Now, John Bolton, he's even begging soldiers to defect, offering, actually saying the most bald-faced lies, the most grotesque way possible, where we can really.
Do y'all know what the Monroe Doctrine is? So the Monroe Doctrine was something that was pushed in 1850, that basically said that if Europe tried to overthrow any of the countries in North America or South America, because remember, we were trying to basically take over that area ourselves. I'm sure you all at least remember one of the only things that was taught to us in school that was probably true was that the United States believed that we had an ordained authority over all land in the area. I think that that was the only honest opinion they gave us about U.S. history, because that's clearly true, right? And the Monroe Doctrine basically said that if Europe tried any type of aggression on North America or South America, then we would attack them ferociously. Now, mind you, the reason that they are trying to push this doctrine that is completely and totally outdated is the fact that Russia is in Venezuela. Now, people, I'm not an expert on foreign policy. I don't know a lot about everything, y'all. Y'all know my motto, but I know a little bit about a lot. The problem is, why is Russia in Venezuela? I can't answer the question for you. They're in Venezuela because we're there. They are in Venezuela because the United States won't leave Venezuela alone. I know even less about Putin personally. I don't think that he can be any worse than any of the other leaders around our country, around the world, right? However, with that being said, for the same reason that Fidel Castro and Nelson Mandela were forced to make deals with Stalin to protect them in their country and to come to the rescue, is the same reason that Maduro would have to make a deal with Putin. I imagine that Stalin was way worse than Putin, considering Putin hasn't committed a genocide yet. But the overall theme still remains. They were scared of American imperialism, and there's only one nuclear-powered superpower and one economic superpower that could stand up to the United States and was willing to do so. So it's ironic that John Bolton would try to apply the theory of the philosophy of the Monroe Doctrine in this particular situation, when the only reason that Russia was invited to Venezuela was because we wouldn't leave. And then in an ironic twist, Rubio, like she said, tweets out this Gaddafi lynching in a threat to Maduro. Think about how ironic that is. Think about it. Do y'all seriously, do y'all really believe that they want to Gaddafi? Do you think that Guaido? Do you think that they would allow Guaido to actually be a real president if he won? We don't even, honestly, people, I'm not even joking. We don't even know if Guaido would survive a term. And the reason why I say that is because, well, the reason they wanted Gaddafi gone wasn't because they were just so concerned about the citizens. Because that's what Marco Rubio is trying to say is the reason that we want to help the Venezuelan people. Because we're so concerned about the citizens here. After we assassinated Gaddafi, there is slavery in Libya now. There is slave trade in Libya. Right. Listen, I don't know. Okay, let me say it again. 'Cause I don't think some. Listen, there is slave trade, and there are kids, men, women being traded in Libya right now, and America has said zero, zilch, nada, niet, nothing about it. Slave trade post-Gaddafi, no slave trade pre-Gaddafi. And then Marco Rubio, on the premise that we're so concerned with the Venezuelan people that we have to take Maduro out, is trying to pretend that the situation with Gaddafi should be an incentive for Maduro to step down. If anything, the situation with Gaddafi is incentive for Maduro to do anything but step down. Because he's seen what happened before. History can teach you a lot. It's so frustrating, in my humble opinion, to see progressives silent on this issue. Because there's only been one that has spoken. Oh, excuse me, Elon spoke up, which I'm going to do a video about that later. But Elon did speak up. So there's two, I think, right now that got it right. Do you understand that silence on this issue while trying to attack Trump over Yemen is almost, in my opinion, it is like, it's damn near criminal, people. Because it is almost as if you are fetishizing, fetishizing, it's a hard word to say, I got a list, I'm getting braces soon. But in all seriousness, you're fetishizing death. You're fetishizing the Muslim plight. And you're okay. You don't have to fight for us to agree with you that what is happening to Muslims, not only in Yemen, but worldwide, really, but specifically in Yemen, you don't have to fight for that. Why? Why do you think that is, people? Think about it like this. They can be silent on Venezuela and speak out against Yemen for the same reasons. They could be silent on what was really happening in Cuba before Fidel Castro was able to take over. Or excuse me, and be silent on Cuba. And then simultaneously, they can be as concerned as they want to publicly with Nicaragua, with the Iran-Contra conflict. There is one thing in common, and has always been in common throughout history. The moment that a name gets attached to the situation, because the media and the textbooks and your professors, then the public opinion, then the academics, everybody, they leech onto those names. Bad guy. There is a antagonist to the quote unquote narrative of the story, and therefore people become hesitant to criticize it or critique it or speak out. But when there's no name and there are only people, then all of a sudden people get brave. What's happening in Yemen is so wrong. What happened in Nicaragua it's so wrong. It should have never happened. Look at my chest. Okay, well, you're going to speak out about what happened in Libya? No. Why? Because Gaddafi's name is attached to it. You're going to speak out about what's really happened in Syria? Why? No. Because Assad's name is attached to it. Anytime you bring up Syria, they'll bring up Assad. Anytime you bring up Venezuela, they'll bring up Maduro. Anytime you bring up Cuba, they'll bring up Fidel. Anytime you bring up, you see the pattern. That is why they have to create a comic book villain, a caricature of a villain out of every single quote unquote leader who will not bend the knee to the United States establishment in the military industrial complex, because it makes it that much easier to make the weak-minded and the egotistical and career-driven. It makes it all the easier to silence them on the issue. You can call it what you want to. I just call a spade a spade. Because if it don't take a damn rocket science. Like if we look at Syria, for example, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize, man, they call Assad a brutal dictator and a psychopath. But I met a lot of optometrists and ophthalmologists in my life, despite the fact that I can't find my glasses right now, so I might be seeing another one pretty soon. But I've seen a lot of them in my life. My mom actually works in optometry. I ain't never met a bloodthirsty dictator of an ophthalmologist, bro. That was the first question. I was like, hold up, what? Huh? He was an ophthalmologist? And then you go look at his pictures, and you're like, Assad looks like somebody who would get bullied in school and then would grow up and become like a philanthropist because he doesn't want other people treated the same way that he was when he was young, because he wanted to be an ophthalmologist when he grew up, when his dad was like a president and his brother was a great military general. Like, he just wanted to be an ophthalmologist, bro. That's all he wanted to do. And it makes you, if you start Googling, don't Google, I lied, do not Google, DuckDuckGo these people. Don't Google nobody, they're going to lie to you. If you start doing DuckDuckGo, you find out things like Maduro was a bus driver. You find out things like Fidel was fighting on the side of Nelson Mandela, right? While the United States was actively fighting against Nelson Mandela. You find out things like, wow, I thought Fidel was this evil guy, but he desegregated all of Cuba. 99% literacy rate in Cuba right now. Best medical school in the world in Cuba right now. You find out things like, okay, if the United States cares about people so much, why didn't we penalize the corporations who had Nazi subsidiaries? As in, they were making guns, weapons, vehicles, tanks, anything you could think of for the Nazis. By the way, they sued us. They sued America for accidentally bombing their manufacturing plants, and they won. They won a lawsuit against America for bombing their Nazi subsidiaries. And you also find out things like, well, damn, no wonder Fidel had so much support, because the same companies that had Nazi subsidiaries are the same ones that had subsidiaries in South Africa and are the same ones that had subsidiaries in Cuba. You start to find a little pattern here. That's why they always have to create a bad guy, because in storytelling, if think about it, Batman fighting a war on terror. Who the hell is War on Terror? I ain't never met that guy. That's not as interesting as the Joker. A person, a face, a personality, a psychopathy that you can attach to that person. It doesn't sound as good when you say Captain America versus the Infinity Stones. No, somebody gotta have the Infinity Stones. Thanos has the Infinity Stone. So you methodology, because then that's part of the narrative too. Well, why are they doing it? And they create these elaborate stories. It is literally storytelling. The names of these people. If you do your research, then you'll start to see patterns throughout history where we took a clear stance against one issue, but we're hesitant on other issues. Even our heroes. And every single one of those issues that we are hesitant on have a name attached to them. A name that we often hear in the history books and is automatically demonized. Let's hear a little bit more of what Abby has to say, and then I'll let you all get back to your lives. And by the way, like I said, if you all were having buffering issues, which I know a lot of you were, don't worry. These clips will be posted up later on today, and it will also be going live again around 6:30, 6:45 this evening. So let's hear what Abby has to say.
I see the heavy hand of empire being played and documented before Bolton gave that Troika of Tyranny speech, and I think that really was mapping out what they wanted to do over Trump's first approach here. Look, 40,000 Venezuelans have been killed by U.S. sanctions since 2017. That is genocidal. That is criminal. They're crimes against humanity. Can you imagine if Maduro's government had killed 40,000 American civilians? We're in a never-ending war on terror because 3,000 American lives were taken on 9/11. I mean, just fathom. It's unfathomable, right? But we shouldn't be laughing. We should.
You hear that? I don't know how I can make that point any better, but Lord Jesus, Abby knocked that one home. Because, in case you missed it, because I know Abby's internet wasn't the best in that particular. And I'm not surprised. Abby's probably going through internet problems just like I am, because when you're speaking out against the military-industrial complex, that tends to be what happens, right? What Abby said, in case you missed it, was that 40,000 people have been killed in Venezuela due to the sanctions of the United States. And she said then, could you imagine if Maduro was responsible for the death of 40,000 Americans, especially considering the fact that 3,000 Americans were killed in 9/11, and we are still in the never-ending war on terror. Still, to this day. Since I was a child, people, listen, since I was a child, we have been involved. 11, was it September? No, so I was 10 when that happened. No, I was 11, I lied. I was 11 when 9/11 happened. I was 11 years old. I have a niece and a nephew who are now alive. 2 years, I lied. They're 5 years old now. And we're still in the same war on terror that we were in when I was 11, which means in 6 years, which for some reason I have a feeling that we'll still be in this war on terror unless Tulsi or Bernie wins. In 6 years, people, my niece and my nephew will be the age that I was when 9/11 happened, which launched us into this war on terror. Over 3,000 people. So imagine what would have happened if this man was somehow directly or indirectly responsible for the death of 40,000 Americans. And we have the unmitigated gall to try and pretend. It's absurd. It is insane. I always tell people, I said, you know, one reason I fight so hard and speak out against the military-industrial complex of the United States. Y'all look at these videos real quick, because I was on y'all side, bruh. I was on y'all side. Because it's going to happen one day. It is what history has shown us. Waged from the United States. How many in Saudi Arabia? And I asked that because right now, in the 11th Circuit Court, right now, Saudi Arabians are being tried for their involvement in 9/11. In Saudi Arabia, bombing their country right now, people. And we have the audacity. Not a single bullet has been fired. It is absurd that we even have to. The sociopaths that we have in office, they don't really care about any of those people who died. The moment that an American dies, and that American became a tool to justify. That's why they say never forget. It is forget because they care about the lives of those who got killed. It's never forget because we, and costing the lives of thousands of soldiers in the process, and costing trauma of thousands of soldiers more. So I want to thank Abby for doing such a brilliant job covering this. Thank you all for sticking around. Like I said, another stream was getting a little irritating. I'm getting irritated too, which is, like I said, I actually literally just upgraded my internet, and you see how that's working out. And so you can check them out.